Welcome to Part 4 of the Admin Settings Training. In this section, we're going to start off in the support tables. The first support table that we're going to look at is the program information. And this is where you're going to include all of your programs that your company is going to offer. So to add a program to the list, you'll go to Actions and Insert New Record. But let's take a look at one that we already have entered. We're going to look at this 30-year fixed. So when you're entering your programs, you'll want to enter in your loan program. This is the name that your users are going to see in the system. So when they're going to choose their loan program, this is how they'll recognize it. You'll also want to enter a description that gives a little more detail about this particular program. Now you'll want to default as much information in here as you can. The more you default, the less your users will have to manually enter. So when they select this loan program, all of this defaulted information is automatically going to be applied to their loan. So keep in mind when you are entering your loan programs, if you want to make them really generic or if you want to make them very specific. The more specific, the more individual loan programs you're going to have in the system that your users can choose from, but your individual users will have less work to actually do. So you'll want to determine how you want to enter your programs in the system. So here we have just some generic information entered. You can also, if it's an ARM, you can default all of this information here. So again, when your user selects this program, it'll automatically apply all of this information to the loan. Same with prepay and buy down information. Now the last tab is for your investors. This is a really important tab, because this is how you link your loan program in ProLender to the investors program in your doc system. Now you'll notice that we have a list of investors, and then we have some fields over here on the right. Now the fields on the right correspond to the doc system. So depending on the doc system that you have set up in interfaces, only those fields that apply to that doc system will appear on the right. So when you go in to create all of your programs, you may only have one or two of these fields. You may not have all of them unless you're using all of the doc systems that are available. So basically, you want to make sure that for each of your investors, let's pick Bank of America, for example, that you enter in the program code. This is the name that your investor calls this particular program. So if you have a generic, 30-year fixed conventional loan, you can probably sell that to multiple investors. So each of the investors may call it something different, and their program code may be something a little different. But what's nice is that you only have to enter this program into ProLender once, and then you can enter in all of the different investors, what they call this particular program. In addition, you want to enter in any additional plan codes that your doc system has assigned to this program. So for example, DSI plan code, that is for DocMagic. And so they may say, oh, well, the plan code that is associated with Bank of America's 30-year conventional fixed loan is CONV. So I would enter that in, and then when my user goes to export from ProLender to DocMagic, DocMagic knows exactly which program they have selected in ProLender. Now, if you have help or if you have trouble with this section, please visit the help file, and it documents each of the fields and what information needs to go in there. Next, let's go down to our purchase adjustments. Now, in the accounting department, your user will have the ability to make adjustments after or for anything after the loan funds. So they need a list of adjustments so that they can document what the adjustments are for. So here you can go up to Actions and you can insert a new record. But let's take a look at one of the adjustments that we have. So here we just enter in the description, and that's all you really need to enter. Your user, when they're working on the loan, they'll select the adjustment, then they'll enter in a dollar amount or a percentage so that they can track that adjustment. And so they won't have the ability to add additional adjustments to this list, so you will want to make sure that you've entered in all of the adjustments that they'll need to use. Now, service providers. In the closing department, we have a screen for service providers where it's going to list all of the service providers that have already been selected on the loan, like your title and escrow companies or your appraiser. However, there may be additional service providers that you need to keep track of. When you export over to your doc system and you have these maybe for a notary, you want to be able to send all of that notary's information over to the doc system as well. So this is how we do it. Now you can come in here and add additional service providers that may have not already been selected on the loan. So again, you'll go up to Actions and insert a new record, but let's take a look at one that we already have. So here we have the company name, their address, contact, email. We want to select the type of service provider that they are. So then again, when we have a fee on this loan, let's say for a notary, and it gets exported over to your doc system, your doc system will know that the notary fee goes to this notary company. So you want to just complete this information. Now your users will have the ability to add additional service providers on the loan, but it's always nice for it already to be there, so they just have to select it from the table. Next, we have suspense and denial reasons. So just like we have conditions on a loan, we have a table for suspense and denial reasons. Now you can always go up to Actions and insert a new reason, but here we can double click on one of these. All you need to enter in is the reason and select whether it's a suspense reason, denial, or maybe it applies to both. Now your users will have the ability to add this reason to their loan and make any adjustments that they need to. So it doesn't have to be super specific. It can be pretty generic. Your users will have the ability to add additional information to it. Next, we have our title held descriptions. Now this is going to show up in the 1003 department. You can always go up to Actions and add additional descriptions. If I just double click on it, it is literally just a description. If you need to disable it for any reason, you have the ability to do so. Next, we have our title and escrow companies. So again, you'll go up to Actions, insert a new record. We'll take a look at one that we already have entered. So here we have the company name, their address. You want to make sure that you enter in all of their license information, the number, the date that it expires. So again, you'll want to complete this information. You'll also want to select the status. We do have business rules that check to make sure that the status is approved. So if it's approved, definitely select it. If it's not, you'll want to select a different status. Now also, you will want to designate whether or not this is a title company, escrow company, or maybe it's both, so that it appears in the correct list. Now next we have our trailing documents. So here we just have a few entered. You can always go to Actions and enter a new record. Let's take a look at one that we already have. So here we've entered in a trailing document of condo writer. You can select whether it is a standard default, yes or no. Since it's a condo writer, it probably won't apply to all loans, so we'll say that it's not a standard default. You can also choose the auto-generate rule option. So when the user uses the auto-generate rule function in ProLender, it's going to look at this logic and determine whether or not this document applies to the loan. So here if I select that this document will be on the loan when the property type is condo, then my user, when they use this function, they can automatically apply this document to their loan. So go through this list and see if any of these types of logic apply to your document. And then again, you can always disable it if you're no longer going to need that trailing document. Now last we have the user information. This is where you're going to set up all of your users. So you'll notice that when you first come in here, you should have a user admin. That's the login that you've logged into ProLender, access admin settings using admin. We recommend that you change that login for the admin user. You'll also want to go in and make sure that you add a login and password for yourself in addition to all of your users. So you can go up to Actions and insert a new record. But let's take a look at one of our records already. So here you'll enter in the user's last name, their first name. You'll want to assign them to a group, which means you're applying a user group security for this user. So if you remember in one of the previous trainings, we talked about user groups. We created security around those user groups based on their job functions. Well, this is where you're going to assign the user to that user group. So here I've assigned it to the administrators, and I've also assigned it to the corporate office. So you'll want to make sure that you do assign your user to an office, because when they go to print or preview a report or form, it's going to automatically place their office's information in the header. Now they can change it if they want, but it will default that information for them. Again, you'll want to enter in all of their phone numbers, email addresses. If you do have to disable a user, you'll just want to select Disable Yes here. Next, we have user settings. So you'll want to check the box next to all of the different jobs that this user is going to be doing. This will ensure that their name is placed in the correct places within the system so that they can be selected as the doc drawer or the funder, things like that. You'll also want to choose whether or not they will be able to see employee loans. So here we have restrict employee loans, yes or no. If they should not be able to see employee loans, you'll want to select yes to restrict them. You can also choose whether or not to limit the loans that your users can see. So here I can restrict the loan by office, which means if I select yes, which means the user can only see loans within ProLender that are assigned to their office. Same for the LO rep and the internal rep. So they'll only be able to see loans that are assigned to them. You can also place a user on alert. Then we can generate a business rule to let you know that this user is on alert. You can also keep track of loan officers' approval states. So if they have licenses in California, you can enter in their license number and expiration. Or maybe they're also licensed in Arizona. You can enter in that state's license and expiration as well. Now, additional information, this is where you're going to enter in their login and password. So here you can grant the user access to ProLender by selecting yes. Now, depending on the way that your company is set up, you may or may not allow your loan officers access to ProLender. However, you do want to enter them as a user so that they can be selected on loans. And if you're using WebLender, then they can log into WebLender. But you'll want to make sure that when you're granting login access, that they should actually have access to ProLender. If you have an employee who leaves the company, you will want to make sure that you disable this feature by selecting login access no. Here you'll enter in their login and their password. Now this applies to both ProLender and WebLender. If you are using WebLender, you'll select their web access level and whether or not that you'll allow them to use the pricing features. If they have additional IDs or numbers, login and passwords for FHA, you'll want to enter that information here as well. So that concludes part 4 of the admin settings training.